This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Hi, from Philadelphia to Erie and from Pittsburgh to Scranton, it's Behind the Headlines. I'm Charlie Greenewalt, Senior Fellow of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, and I'm joined, as usual, by my co-host, Maura Donnelly. Maura, welcome.
Hello, Charlie.
Why, it's a new year,
It
and
is.
we talked earlier about resolutions.
Yes.
Are you honoring your resolutions?
So far, so good.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so far, so good.
Well,
Ask me in another couple months.
That's a good. That's a good point.
One day at a time.
Okay. Well, we have someone else to join us today to talk about resolutions, the new year, and new beginnings. Gordon Denlinger is the Executive State Director of the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the Pennsylvania chapter, and you have been on the job just a brief period of time. But Gordon, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here. At this point, a few months into the job, so loving it, loving being with NFIB.
Well, Gordon, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we want to learn about NFIB a little bit more as well. But you were a former state legislator. You were a state representative from Lancaster County. Is that true?
That is true. Guilty as charged.
Yes.
I spent 6 terms in the House. Financial background, CPA and corporate controller prior to that for 18 years, and then felt the tug of public service and threw my hat in the ring in a special election. My predecessor passed away in office. And so early 2003 went through the process of a party selection and public election and was sworn in April of 03 to the beginning of an amazing journey in the State House, and enjoyed that until I threw my hat into the ring for a state Senate seat, and that didn't turn out quite the same way. So that became the end of my public service or office holding journey. I then attempted to launch a bank, Hamilton Bank in Lancaster County. Also did not quite get over the goal line on that, but a great journey with some wonderful people. And a brief hop in the lieutenant governor's race of the beginning of this last process. Beaten there by Jeff Bartos, a really good guy, but enjoyed that journey being all around the state with the state committee, and now happy to be here fighting for free enterprise and business folks all across the state.
It seems like you are well suited for that, so welcome. That's
Thank
great.
you. A lot of points of connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're pretty new, but I'm sure you've had enough chance to get your feet wet. And what are some of the top priority issues that our small businesses are facing right now that you're going to be working on?
Well, the economy is strong. So, first I think we need to step back and say these are amazing times in a certain economic sense. That also presents challenges. We have a 3.87 roughly percent unemployment rate. So probably the biggest thing we hear from business owners, and NFIB is the mom and pop type businesses.
Right.
Our average number of employees would be 5. So these are really small businesses.
Yeah.
Workforce supply issues are a big concern. At this point of essentially full employment, folks finding qualified people with strong work ethic and all of that becomes their biggest challenge. So that's probably big number 1 at this point. Then coming into Governor Wolf, now newly inaugurated and off on his second term journey, we're watching policy issues with the administration. And the governor ran as a small business governor. That was certainly part of the campaign ads.
It sure was.
We hope to see that lived out, maybe a little more fully than in some earlier times. But we'll start optimistically here. And however, we do know right out of the gate there's some things being voiced around Harrisburg. Minimum wage is a big one, and that's a national issue certainly. And then also mandatory paid leave efforts. And for small businesses particularly, that's really a struggle. Folks want to do the right thing, and they want to be with their employees, but mandated is a whole nother level.
Right.
And the challenge is just keeping the doors open when you have folks that are out and away. So those two, minimum wage and mandated leaves are a matter of some concern. And beyond that, just the general economic climate in PA. we're starting to see an outward migration of our millennial generation, and that's a concern for all of us.
Yeah, that doesn't help the small
bipartisan.
businesses. Yeah.
You bet.
Right.
So that's probably just the general climate would be another issue.
Yeah, again, that doesn't help the workforce supply, does it?
No. When folks, and we have a great university college system in PA. I think we all know that.
And we're exporting.
We are.
Yeah.
You know, they come here, they're educated, they actually like the state. When
Yeah.
you poll young people, they love PA. But you know, the U-Hauls load up and they head south and west to other states, and that's an economic equation at certain points. So yeah.
Well, I guess representing small business is a whole different enterprise than folks would have at the Pennsylvania State Chamber of Commerce, for example, because if you're representing businesses of 5 employees or less, for the most part, when you get into questions such as minimum wage and mandated paid leave, I'm sure the owners want to do better for their employees, but they have to do it within their budget limits.
Right.
And that must be a challenge for all of them.
You know, business is an equation. It really is. I mean, at the end of the day, you have your revenues coming in and your expenses going out, and do the numbers add up? And is there hopefully a little bottom line, or you know, you're getting out the red pen for red ink at the bottom? You know, these factors all enter in, and you know, the larger corporations, they have more, I guess, capacity to deal with, you know, regulatory burden and tax policy. But the small folks, you know, a high percentage of them, frankly, fail. Startups that begin, the percentages are, you know, north of 80% that don't make it. A lot of that's about capitalization. Do they have adequate funding at the beginning for, you know, a loss period till they get to sustainability? But no, it's always a battle, you know, every day for those folks that run the smalls to remain viable.
So explain to our audience what the relationship is between NFIB Pennsylvania and the national organization of NFIB. How do you work together?
Sure, great question. DC, of course, is ground zero for the federal, you know, Congress and the administration of their issues. We, being Pennsylvania, are really the keystone state in more ways than one right now, and that's about the presidential election that's coming up. So our national office in DC, you know, they have on the ground efforts for small businesses, same you know, same association base. But they're working on the federal tax code, federal regulations, EPA, so forth. We here do the same at the state level. But again, because of our proximity and because Pennsylvania will be a ground zero state in the 2020 presidential election.
With maybe even some candidates from Pennsylvania.
Indeed,
yeah,
yes, we're seeing some names come forward,
yes,
right?
We
are. We become very important, and you know, the president loves to come into PA. He holds the rallies, and we usually try to connect him with a couple small businesses to tour through or connect with. The administration loves to do that. So we're, by proximity, closer to the national, I would say,
okay.
and certainly very important right now.
Right, and going to get more important.
Indeed, indeed.
So you can get a lot of attention in your first full year as
here
as
in the role.
Executive. Yeah.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, nothing is more important than maintaining a robust economy in Pennsylvania. If people don't have jobs, then nothing else matters. First, you've got to be able to feed your family, pay your mortgage, and clothe your family. So, a robust economy is so important. How does NFIB work with the State Chamber of Commerce? How do you work with the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association to pool, if you will, combine your efforts? How do you all dovetail with one another?
Sure.
Do you all work
Do we?
together?
Yes. The first question is, do we?
Thank you, Barbara.
And the answer to that is a resounding yes, we do.
Good.
I would say there's kind of 4 platforms here in and around Harrisburg that are really the advocacy groups for economic and business issues. So you've highlighted them, Charlie. The PA Chamber, which is for the bigs. You know, the big corporations tend to, you know, they have their membership base. Pennsylvania Manufacturers are, you know, historic manufacturing base, and then Commonwealth Foundation, which would you know, speak out on economic issues, certainly, and then NFIB. So we view ourselves as one of the big 4, if you will, here in town. We coordinate everywhere we can, and that's again, along, I would say, more conservative economic lines. So on points of legislation moving forward, we're all kind of on speed dial, if you will, talking to each other about, what do we think about this? How do we engage with it? And so, even at the beginnings here of a new legislative session, the coordination is real time, and that's a lot of it's virtual, electronic. But once in a while, we'll all get in a room and have a conversation as well. But fighting for larger corporations and the smalls often comes together, and then the economic climate that you mentioned, so very important. The health of that tied to maybe our tax structure, regulatory structure. Those are points of commonality for these organizations, and NFIB is a strong player in that mix.
That's good.
Okay, well, Gordon, we want to thank you very much for coming. We hope to have you back again later in the year.
Look forward to that.
And good luck in your new assignment.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll be back with the second segment of Behind the Headlines right after this. Stay tuned.
Behind the Headlines is brought to you as a public service by the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, the largest, most influential municipal association in the Commonwealth. Since 1921, PSATS has been preserving and strengthening township government and securing greater visibility and involvement for townships in the state and federal political arenas. Covering 95% of Pennsylvania's land mass, townships represent 5.5 million residents, more than any other type of political subdivision in Pennsylvania. Behind the Headlines is also brought to you by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, helping hospitals provide healing, health, and hope to communities across the state. And by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. The Pennsylvania Chamber serves as the frontline advocate for business on Pennsylvania's Capitol Hill by influencing the legislative, regulatory, and judicial branches of state government. Additional underwriting provided by the Worrell Corporation Foundation, based in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, by the Edward H. and Jeannie Arnold Foundation, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business. Behind the Headlines is also supported as a public service by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Visit pahighwayinfo.org.
Hi, welcome back to Behind the Headlines. On this segment, I'm joined by Mr. E.H. Arnold, who is the chairman of the board of Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy and one of the most distinguished business individuals, the business persons in the history of the Pennsylvania economy. You formerly owned Arnold Trucking. Arnold Industry, and
New Penn Motor, Arnold Logistics, Arnold Transportation.
For many, many years.
Yes.
And now you've gotten out of that just how many years ago, Ed?
It's a little over 20. It was 911.
It was 9? Is that right?
A month after the crisis.
But you were on our board beforehand, and now you're the chairman of the board afterwards. And of course, this is an Arnold Report, and we have questions that have been sent to you from across the Commonwealth. And so we'd like to get right to it and ask you these questions. By the way, across the bottom of our screen, you can see our email address to send additional questions for Mr. Arnold for future editions of the Arnold Report. Well, the first question we have is from someone who's interested in cybercurrency. It's about blockchain technology. This individual would simply like to know if we could use blockchain technology in state government in an attempt to try to make state government more efficient and more effective.
Unfortunately, I am not at all that well versed in the blockchain technology and how exactly it's used, and so therefore I really can't give a comment because I don't feel I have the expertise.
Although you've talked about, I guess the person maybe thought that you might have more of a background because we've talked about cybercurrency here in the past.
That is one thing to take a fling as an investment, and another thing is to comment on how the blockchain actually works.
Sure. Well, a second question is, what energy sector would you recommend investing in at this time?
Very frankly, I think it's a very speculative area between Russia and China manipulating things like that and so on. I do not think the risk to reward is there, and I don't think you should invest in that industry.
No energy sector at all.
No. I'm sorry. I just think it's too speculative.
Okay.
Just like right now, it crashed down again. Inventories went up. The market it was at 40. It went to 60, up to 70. Now it's back down to below 50.
Well, you're talking the price for a barrel of oil.
But that's the biggest single energy item. Yes, uranium is again. It's also fluctuated from 80 down to 20, back to 40. I don't think anybody is wise enough to figure out what it's going to do next.
Okay. Well, the next question is, and this might put you on the carpet a little bit, which bank in Pennsylvania do you prefer to do business with?
Well, personally, my number one statement is deal in local banks. Local banks do not speculate in different unusual instruments, so therefore, in my opinion, they're sounder, even though the government will probably bail out the big banks anyway. But in my little world, because realize we're talking about Pennsylvania here, obviously, Jonestown is an extremely small bank. It's only a little over $500 million, and this is the only left Lebanon County local bank, and they do a nice job. At the same time, Fulton Bank, I look at as, because they're such a good community bank, they actually support the community in many different ways. They're just great. They're just a good company with good people. So I personally like Fulton of the local banks, but there's a lot of other good local banks. And if you look in your area, again, go on the internet, get the list of them, or what's the branch closest to you, what's the person you feel comfortable dealing with. It's very much a personal decision. They all pretty much have just about all the services, so it's really a personal preference.
Okay. Next question is, how can I buy American when it seems that everything in Walmart is made in China?
Well, there's one simple answer to that: don't shop at Walmart. Obviously, Walmart does not have hardly anything made in America.
And that's so ironic, because Joe Walton used to advertise about that they were selling American products and you should buy American with them. And it's not the case anymore.
I mean, they are probably one of the biggest reasons why everything is not manufactured in this country, because they have driven, you must do it cheaper, 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 and we don't care about anything else. And so but we're off the subject. Really, if you want to find things, one of the places, and it's not a giant company, but it's where you can find it, is Amazon. And they have definitely a list of American products and so on. And if you try to find the brands, like one example, S&S is one of the few shoe brands located in America. You can buy it over the internet. There is actually, I was surprised when I looked it up, because I happened to go to the store in Hershey that carries their product, and they do carry other American brand shoes. And I did notice, looking on Amazon, New Balance actually has one pair of sneakers that they do actually make in America yet, which is surprising. But basically, normally you'll find that American-made products are generally pretty well made, but they're also not inexpensive. One of the few reverse of that statement is Giant Grant, I think it is. Grant Giant. That they make jeans and clothing and so on, and they're moderately priced, but they're very good, and the company's growing very, very rapidly. But again, if you look it up under the best American-made products or something like that on the internet, it'll give you a list of different companies that, but you have to search around. And again, the biggest thing, obviously, when you go to a store, look at the labels. Because there are some things made in America in general stores, not in, I would say, Walmart particularly.
Well, we have to give a shout out to ABC. ABC has had a running special on the nightly news featuring and highlighting companies that are producing goods here in America and that have turned around and are doing well. So
yeah, I didn't realize that.
For several years now. So good to them. The next question is, what's happening to General Electric stock? A little while ago, General Electric stock fell to $6.66 per share. There's a little biblical message there, perhaps, I don't know. But since that time, it's gone up a bit. But General Electric was once one of the greatest companies in the world. What's happened to General Electric?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't comment, well, you should or shouldn't buy any stock, because that's something I won't do. But basically, General Motors, I could say, is at the highest...
General Electric.
General Electric of, General Motors too, is a gross mismanagement.
Do they need Jack Welch back?
Well, maybe some of the things Jack Welch did maybe are coming back to bite them too. I'm not sure. When they went to the banking business and the loaning, they didn't reserve things properly. And right now, one of the things that's really hurt them into the tens of billions of dollars is they under-reserved the cost of insuring people in retirement homes. Mm-hmm. And that's another blow against them. So overall, they are a very challenged company. And they're well, again, they maybe this idea that you can be good in a lot of different fields. Mm-hmm. There's very few companies that succeeded doing that. This idea that you should focus more on a industry and do it well. They have several places they do well, but they did so many things, and therefore they've now tried to divest a lot of those. But they've got a lot of challenges.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The next question is tips. This individual would like you to give them tips on how they can improve their credit rating, and they actually want to know, too, how their credit rating is determined and by whom.
Well, first of all, you have three credit companies, Equifax, which if you want which unfortunately your information will get hacked because they have it, but they have been an extremely unethical company, but they're very large, maybe the largest. Esperin, ESPERIAN, and Union. That if you look it up, you can call them. They have free service. They also have fee for service. Obviously, I'm sure what you get for free is more limited. And really, you're an individual, and your credit is an individual thing. So it would be best to contact them to go over your credit rating. Why is it what it is? And they can do that. They may not do it for free, but they can do it. Therefore, the things you could do to improve it. I mean, has your life changed? Maybe before you were single and you didn't pay your bills quite so promptly, or you just lived beyond your means, and now you're married, you're responsible, you have a child, and so your lifestyle is different. Well, then you could possibly convince them to maybe drop some of those bad items that have hurt your credit. The other thing, obviously, is you must establish credit. So if you did pay for your car and you paid for your house, well, you should have credit cards. You have to have some credit transactions to get ranked.
And then you got to be sure to pay them on time.
And then, of course, you must always pay everything promptly. That's when you lose your rating, is because you didn't pay promptly. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole bunch of different criteria. And very frankly, I mean, even if you have too many credit cards and too much credit, that even if you paid it promptly, that could be put against you because they feel that you are at risk of not being able to pay. So, Henry, you'd have to go over your thing with one of these companies. They're on the internet. You can find their number and talk to them.
Okay. The next question is, what are your top tips on how to prepare financially for retirement?
That basically, first of all, the biggest thing I would say is, unless you are extremely successful, don't retire early. Because what you have to look at is inflation. And if you take a simple thing, if you have, and I'm not faulting the government here, because the government cost of index is based upon a lot of items, but it doesn't necessarily really reflect the cost of living of a retired person. Because one of the areas is housing cost is a big item in that thing. Well, if you already own your home and you're living in it and you have hopefully no mortgage, now the cost of housing is a way smaller item to you. It's your food, it's travel, it's entertainment, different things. So how they weight it and what your weight would be is quite different. So I think that it's very critical. If you're going to retire, you should, number one, look at how long you're going to live. And the probability, if you're going to retire at 65, you're going to live for at least 20 years. So in the 20-year time, cost of living is going to at least double and maybe triple, depending upon, and especially in your individual areas.
And isn't one of the biggest cost of livings for that age group would be healthcare costs?
That's correct. Healthcare is the biggest probably thing that's challenging people because it is rising at what is considered the general rate, double or at least, and maybe triple the rate of inflation. And of course, as you get older, as you and I both know, you use more and more health care. So therefore, it basically is what the index is. So you really have to sit down and say, this is, first of all, if you want to travel, if you want to do this, if you want to do that, what do you want to do in retirement? So your costs may not drop that much. And if you have a pension, it's probably fixed. It's not to inflation, and you cannot expect to live on Social Security, not for the quality of life you'd want to have. Mm-hmm. So, and then that's why a lot of people work when they're retired. Part of it because they want something to do, but part of it is because they need the money. Mm-hmm. So I basically, I would think you really have to sit down, possibly with a financial planner, and see exactly what am I going to need and how long I'm going to live, because the number of people that are outliving their retirement income is very prevalent today.
So we can't underestimate the importance of a good financial planner.
That's right, yes, I would agree.
Okay. One last question for us today is, as a recent college graduate, I would like to become an investor. What investment strategies would you recommend to a beginning investor?
Well, again, I would very frankly think that one of the easier ways is to get your different investment letters. There's a whole bunch. There's a list of the best ones on the internet that says the best performers for 2017. Not that necessarily past action is going to reflect future, but again, the letters would tell you where the best here and there and so on. And also, I happen to be biased to a little one called BI Research. It happens to be the gentleman was my next door neighbor years ago. He moved away 40 years ago. But basically, he's small stocks, and he's got a good track record. But again, it depends what your comfort is. It would educate you, because a good investment letter tells you why you should do something, not just that you want to do it. Charlie, just for everybody, right now, one of our subjects here, we're going to go in detail. We talked about what was the subject?
Oh, well, in the new year, we are planning a special Arnold Report or two that will be standalone reports on the economy and on matters of finance, particularly some items that have been a concern to you for quite some time.
So basically, we may incorporate these items in there, but overall, the biggest thing is don't try to pick the stocks yourself. And unfortunately, stockbrokers tend to want to make commissions, and I wouldn't say they're the best place to make.
And on that note, we're out of time.
Yes.
But we'll be back again, and you send your letters in and your questions to the Arnold Report. We'll see you next week. Tune in then. Bye-bye.